All right, this week you guys are doing the tracing exercise, and I mentioned tracing a little earlier. I think when I read to you the very first paragraph of The Great Gatsby, I said you might try tracing this, by which I meant bring your own character, your own situation to this passage that you're reading, and refigure it based on your data, as it were. One of my teachers, the great Afro-Caribbean poet Derek Walcott, once told my class of grad students that the way he started as a poet, and this is a Nobel Prize winning, internationally known, famous poet, that he started by imitating the poems of Keats, of John Keats, the 19th century English poet Keats, and just replacing, going line by line, but putting in details from where he grew up in St. Lucia in the Caribbean. And I don't know what the initial results were when he was 14 or 15, what they were like, but this having been not only his student but his reader, you can see that I can see that this was really the birth of a sensibility, of his own original sensibility, not one that's derivative in the negative sense, but one that is learned from history fully. So one thing I'm having you to do is actually very technical. It's looking at Virginia Woolf's sentence structures in a very short but famous passage in which, from To the Lighthouse, in which Mrs. Ramsay is contented in that her dinner party is coming off, and she can finally relax, at least for a moment, and she imagines a trout stream and compares it to the conversation that's going on at the dinner table. And it's a wonderful example, actually, if any of you are fans of Virginia Woolf, it's a wonderful example of her skill at creating a kind of layering effect of consciousness, not unlike the concept that we've been working with from the get-go when we worked on Scene, of having different things happen at once. You're thinking about the people at your dinner table, but you're also imagining something from nature. The other thing that I'm hoping that this exercise will do is get you guys to experiment with types of sentences that you might not otherwise write. And I think it behooves all of us, when we're reading wonderful published stories of very different kinds, to imagine how we might learn from and adapt not only thematic, big picture aspects of what we're reading, but technical, sentence level aspects. Would I ever write a sentence that began with that dependent clause? Look what she does with the parenthetical there. You know that you're a writer when you're geeking out over syntax, over sentence structure, because sentence structure, I call it geeking out and getting into the technicalities and enjoying them, but these are the vehicles for emotion and for dynamic action and exciting stories, and also it's a great way to refresh your own practice, your own interest in your writing. When I've had writer's block, to select the cliche of cliches, a writer's block, a friend of mine says, we never know if it's the auction block or the chopping block. When I've had writer's block, I've always thought, oh, this is some big psychological thing. I'm writing about my hometown, and I'm confronting this psychological barrier, the idea of who I am and how I was made, and blah, 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 and I might have to go into therapy for 10 years to be able to write this. Well, that may be the case. But what I've found is that when I've had writer's block, it may seem to be interior, it may seem to be psychological, but usually it's just technical. And doing something like this tracing exercise is a real great way to refresh yourself and get out of writer's block in the future if you happen to encounter that. Why? Because we're forced to get out of our habits. No two writers construct sentences exactly the same way. And when you're forced to construct sentences in a different way, it's almost like starting anew all over again, and you get excited and you start to think about aspects of experience that you weren't remembering before or weren't imagining before, and you really kind of refresh your palette and add to your palette, add different colors. So I'd encourage you, as writers, you're also, of course, you have to be great readers. And I'd encourage you to start to think about how your favorite writers put sentences together. How does one favorite writer of yours put sentences together differently than another? If I were to ask you point blank, okay, you like Hemingway and you like Fitzgerald, how would you describe the difference in their sentences? I mean, that's a kind of cruel professorial thing to pull on someone right off the at point blank, but it's worth your thinking about and experimenting with. And these stories are, they're your birthright as readers of American English. They're copyrighted, they belong to other people, but you can get your hands dirty imitating them, tracing them, learning from them, doing your little tributes to them, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find a great writer who hasn't at some time imitated. I mean, of course, there's a problem when you get to publishing a book if it's too obviously in the thrall of your favorite writer, but that's not something we're worried about here, and I really can't stress enough that this exercise, technical though it is something specifically that you can carry over into your practice when this class is over, but also just in terms of an attitude as a reader and as a writer is a really valuable resource. How you can learn from and add to your palette by reading other published stories. Okay, I'm curious to see what you guys do with your version of Virginia Woolf. Who is afraid of your version of Virginia Woolf? All right, good luck.